Sup everybody, this is Mattia and today we're going to take a look at the KZ EDX. These are one of the cheapest IMs available on the market currently. They're not the cheapest, but they're one of the cheapest. They're made by KZ Acoustics, of course, and there's a lot of interesting things these do, and especially considering their value. I want to talk, before getting into the review, I want to talk about the general value that these bring to the market, and generally the value of Chinese IMs and what they're capable of for a certain price point. No earphone that is bundled with your phone is going to get nearly the same performance that these have. I will literally go out and suggest to anybody that listens to, like, even for 30 minutes a day to music, I will go out and scream to them, try these. They don't cost much, they cost even less than what you will pay at a Walmart store. Those like cost $20, $10, these cost $5 to $7. It's nothing, and they get so much more than those. And there's so much more enjoyment that you can get out of music with these than any other bundled IM, earbud, whatever that is included with your phone, laptop, tablet, I don't care. Because with these kind of things, I discovered why these hype me up is how much really can you get and how much really people can experience these things for this kind of price, which is stupid almost. Like, it's the value of these things, just in general, not only of these, I'm not talking only about of these. There are other cheap IMs in this like $10 to $20 price range that do things that are absurd. And I'm going to be honestly not very nitpicky when talking about these, because they do have some flaws if you review them from an audiophile standpoint, but not really anything that I can pick out and say, oh, these are definitely not worth it because of that or because of this. These are 100% destroying what they do for the price point. They make no sense to me, honestly, and how much Chi-Fi has speeded up its evolution, it's ridiculous. So I'm sorry for all this babbling and just saying that people should know these, people should get more out of their music, and these are a gateway for that. And yeah, let's jump into the review. I'm going to talk about the build quality. Let's start with the earbuds themselves. IMs. Don't kill me if I call them earbuds, sorry. They are this classy, like, gloss black. Fingerprints are a problem with these, but I don't care really. You can wipe them out easily. As you can see, I don't know if... See? Here you go. You can barely see it, but there is a huge fingerprint, and these catch onto that really well, unfortunately. They have this plastic housing. It's extremely light. These don't weigh nothing. I could literally blow them away with my with air. And they don't weigh nothing. They are very comfortable. The stock tips suck. I will recommend to change them because they have that like star pattern on them, and after some time they start to hurt a bit. These are the Triple Win foamies, and they're really comfortable. They cost a bit. They're $10 for 3 different pairs of 3 different sizes. but they're really worth it. They do not destroy themselves like most foam ear tips do after some time, and they are more resilient than most, and they're very comfortable. They are like a very fast foam. They retrieve themselves very easily, almost like the Kone tips, and so they are built decently. Honestly, I do not feel like breaking them. They're surely much better than your earpods, not AirPods, earpods. Well, they are actually maybe built better than the AirPods, whatever, because they are very sturdy, honestly. The only time I saw them removing the outer shell from themselves was when my brother hit them with, like, he literally sat on them, and only at the time the shell didn't crack, but the faceplate like tore off completely. But if you treat them decently, you really are going to make these last a long time, because they're KZ, and honestly, despite KZ being not the best company out there, the quality of the build and the toughness of these builds is great. Honestly, it's not an acrylic shell, so it's not as resilient as those, but it's very good. It has the classic 2-pin. It's flush, but it has a recession, because as you can see with this is not, of course, the stock cable. My god, if that was the stock cable, I will have calmed on these. Sorry. This is literally a flush 2-pin with a recession to make this housing pop into the IM, which I think it's a much better solution than the standard Anole, like the QDC connection that makes the 2-pin protrude. I don't like that. I do not like even the flush 2-pin, but this is a different flush 2-pin. It almost seems like a USB-B entrance, like is indestructible. This is kind of like that. These are not going to break at any point, honestly. I do not feel that at all. So build, yeah, they're beautiful looking, honestly. For that $5, save $7. I think you can choose white, but with this like gloss black, holy crap, especially with this gold cable, like, and the gold X, it like finishes itself in this beautiful combination, honestly. So my brother likes black as a color, and I decided to give these to him. Yeah, I don't know if he can actually evaluate IMs, but he likes them. That's all of what I want to know, honestly. So build quality on these is nice. It's not the best. It's not acrylic shell. It's not super resilient, but it's very good, honestly, and much better than what you get normally. So the cable sucks. I'm going to say it up front. The cable sucks. It has these they're not as bad as the blonde ones that like do the 360 fucking thing that is unwearable, but they're uncomfortable, honestly. This part tends to almost want to strip your ear off, and that's why I decided to change with this Linsole LSC08. I think the cable is the LSC08. And that is quite an expensive cable. It's not super expensive, it's like $50 though. So I wouldn't take this cable with these. I just have it lying around, so I used it, but I will recommend like a $6 to $7 cable. There are some bonkers cable for that price range, and you can not only have an extremely good sounding IM for that price, but an extremely good looking one. You can be like, holy shit, with your friends, like you show these to your friends, you put a good cable on these, not this please, but you're gonna show off. My god, you're gonna get some attention for sure. It's like that very thin, very tightly braided 2-core. It's a 4-core in complex, but when it comes up to the splitter, it's a 2-core on each side, and it has this it's so stiff, my god. It is a functional cable. It surely is better than those rubber cables, standard cables that come with your AKG buds, but it's not that good in terms of all the cables I've tested, honestly. It's stiff, it's resilient, and it has, unfortunately, I do like a standard straight connection. These have the 90-degree plug, so I do not like it. I know some people prefer this, but this cable is completely usable. I just do not think I will personally use it a lot. Fuck this shit. Anyway, let's turn back to these. So, comfort, very good, honestly. Better than my Starfields, and my Starfields were a very, very comfortable IM. These are lighter, and they don't have that, like, flange there that inserts in a specific part of my ear that I don't recall the name of, but they are very, very comfortable, honestly, and they don't weigh nothing, and yeah, I could wear these all day. Isolation on the other side, it's not that great. My Starfields do a better job. Maybe even my Venture Electronics Bonus IE Pro do a better job than these. I will not necessarily recommend them with at least a silicone tip. I will not recommend them for an outdoor, completely outdoor usage. But if you use some foamies, then that's fine. I think it's going to be better, honestly. And yeah, these are nice, very nice, honestly, with comfort. One of the most comfortable IMs I've ever tried, and under my old Shozi and Neo CP that I gifted to my girlfriend. I don't have them anymore, but I do remember how fucking comfortable they were. They were great with comfort. They had like those pill-shaped things, and they inserted to your ears, and you didn't even feel them anymore. They were like shaped like a bean. I wish more manufacturers did that, because that's a great design. But yeah, comfort, these are nice, very nice. The grills are those classic cheapo stamped, pressed, fucking aluminum things. I don't want to even talk about those. They're decent, but fine. You're not gonna get better results with this price range, honestly, for the grills. And remember to clean them up, because these, once lost, I do not think they're replaceable. They're like a super cheap thin foil aluminum. But anyway, that's fine. So, sound quality. Ooh, that's where these get better. That's where these like really show up. This graph is from Pervan Audio. I decided to print it out because I simply do not want to edit the video, and I decided to print it directly and have it on hand to show it to you. So, as you may see, the general frequency response follows a V-shape, that's a V-shape sound with very elevated bass and very elevated lower treble, and maybe not really much upper mid-range. As you can see, there is a dip from like 2.5K to almost 5K and a half, I think. That's a strong dip, and it follows like peaks, and peaks. And these do reflect it to a certain point, but I do not think it's nearly as bad as the graph may suggest. I checked also the other graphs, and I decided to take this as it was not exaggerating the treble, but despite having not the most exaggerated treble of the grabs I've seen, as these are also slightly subjected to some unit variance. I think that this reflects, for the most part, what these sound to me, aside from the peaks. There are some peaks, but we're gonna get to that later. And yeah, the mids are a bit sucked out. It doesn't have as much upper treble as the graph may suggest. I do not find this peak to be existing, but I do consider the measurements, and all the measurements should be considered after 8K from what I know, not relevant, not accurate. So I'm going to stop like there. That's 8K, and I'm going to stop there. This is what I will consider accurate, from there to there. The rest, I don't think you should see it. If you're new to graphs, this I think is from 20 Hertz to like 300 Hertz. You have the true sub bass under the 100 Hertz, maybe the 150 Hertz. You have the true sub bass. Then you have the mid bass going from like 100 to 300 Hertz, or like 300 from 400, or 150 to 400, and you have that the mid bass. You have the more that gives the impact. The sub bass gives presence and depth to the sound, and the mid bass gives a sense of punch and impact. And you have from there to 3K, you have all your mid-range. Then from 3K and above, you have your upper mid-range, and then the treble. And then after 10K, you have your brilliance. Brilliance means how much air is in the sound, how much space and definition between various instruments can be defined, really can be found here. And that gives the sense of air, spaciousness, of an actual feeling of breathability to the sound. I'm always extra super fucking detailed with the sound description. I know that some people ask me to be more concise, but I cannot do that. When I describe something, I gotta go thoroughly with all the sound description. I want to be as clear and as concise as possible, with as many details I can transmit to you. So I don't know if I can do those short videos, because it's not my style. I like doing these huge fucking ramblings about the sound, and because generally, when talking about myself, I'm a more person that when starts a discussion and needs to explain something, I don't stop like at the first 30 words. I don't not explain generally what a thing is. I go into fucking detail, and you can find it also here. I want to explain it to you. So let's start with the sub bass. The sub bass on these is elevated, of course. My god, you see that? It's like from more than 10 decibels, like 20 a tiny bit more than 10 decibel. That's a lot, but it is not a particularly muddy bass. It has a good impact. The mid bass slopes down at maybe too late. Starts to slope down at 100 Hertz, and it doesn't do that like immediate drop off. It goes gradually to 800 Hertz, and that's where it stops. And it has a bit of energy between 200 and 300 Hertz, and that's where the mid bass comes on these. And I think it's a bit too much, because it does give a sense of slam and impact, but it tends to slightly bleed into the mid-range. However, what that means is these are a very fun earphone to listen to. That 10 dB of bass elevation, yeah, I can hear that in the sub bass, not in the mid bass, because the mid bass is slightly more in line with the treble and the upper mid range, and it's not as forceful as the sub bass. The sub bass on these with the right insertion can be really shaking your ears off. It's not a super clean bass, it's not a super tight nor super fast bass, but it's a fun one. It's like when you put EDM on these, it doesn't have the most impact, it doesn't have the most punch, but it's a lot of it, and you hear that like movement of the driver going like, oh my god, and you hear that and you like it. It's good. If you're a bass head, I will consider these. They're not the tightest bass, they're not the most precise, cleanest bass, but they're a whole hell of fun, honestly. Then we go into the mid-range. As I may have preceded from my previous words, yeah, the mid-range has some like leakage from the bass that comes in and tends to warm up the general signature. But since the mid-range is not that elevated and it lends itself to sounding a bit more thin, that warmth that comes from the bass is actually a good thing, a very good one, honestly. It's you can honestly hear that thinness if the bass is not present, and when compared to the bass presence, the mid-range does suffer. It's a bit like the Sony IR Z1R, where like the bass is godly and then the mid-range is a bit thin and a bit lacking in emotions. I do not think this lacks in emotions, especially in voices. When talking about something outside the instruments that do tend to sound a bit thinner, I think that voices, especially choruses, like those multiple voices that are placed very much outside your head, these actually do stage very well. We're going to talk about that in a second. Voices that are staged in a chorus-like manner, those sound very, very good with these. I think they are great sounding with that kind of music where I'm not talking about orchestral passages necessarily, but when you have like a drop coming in a song, what song can what album can I recall? The Greatest Showman OST. That album has a lot of choruses. There's a lot of ambience, there is a lot of impact, slam, and like punch. And the choruses on that, and also the Lion King OST, they sound amazing. They're like breathing on you almost, and they're displayed in a outside, very dispersed manner. And since these do not have the greatest imaging, and they do have that bit of diffuse sound, I think that it actually helps with the choruses, because they sound grand, big, huge, massive, and they're not exactly defined since the imaging is not that great. You can hear actually they shift positions. No, these are not accurate at all. But for that kind of music, it's a very pleasant experience, very pleasant. Those who are neutral heads, no, I do not think these are a super balanced earphone. They're more like a severe V shape, but they have some special character to them. And the mid-range, since it's dipped, it also translates in a sense of something that sounds farther, that sounds more expansive. These have a big scale and a big soundstage. Not a super massive soundstage, but a super massive scale. What do I mean by scale is the actual bigness of an instrument, not how far it is placed from you, but how big it sounds. If you take the HD600s, the HD600s have an intimate stage, but they do represent vocals in a manner that they almost double the face of the actual singer. You actually feel the vocal that is huge, the stage is there, but the instruments that are played, especially in the mid-range zone on those headphones, is like, ooh, massive. And these do kind of that, especially with the bass, honestly. And the mid-range, since it's a bit scooped, actually a lot scooped, but it's not dead. It's not a dead mid-range, it's not a super extra thin mid-range, and it doesn't lack emotions like some earphones do. It doesn't lack emotions despite it being a bit thin. So it's fine, honestly. It's fine, and it has that sense of space and dimensionality despite not having the most precise imaging. So yeah, that's all I could say with the mid-range. And male vocals, I think, are a bit warmer, a bit softer, and female vocals are a bit more thinned out, but they're clearer than the male vocals. Treble, upper mid-range and treble. The upper mid-range on these is actually not very elevated. That dip here actually tones down quite a bit of the energy that comes from the upper mid-range, and the rest of it is derived from the lower treble. But the overall, despite having these many valleys and peaks, these do not really sound like they're I'm going to give you a close-up because I forgot to do it before. Here we go. So while explaining this to you, I'm going to make you see them more closely. See the lower treble and the upper mid-range are not that elevated, honestly. When you hear them, those peaks are indeed present, but the elevation that the graph suggests, it's not, to my experience at least, and after a bit of burn-in, it's not as massive, honestly. It's not as fatiguing as the graph suggests. Of course, there are some songs that can trigger those peaks, and I do find that they do exist indeed, but they're not fatiguing. The treble almost has this kind of softness to it that doesn't really get in line with the graph. It's a soft, pleasing, and a rather dark treble, because the upper treble is not that extended, and I think that does contribute to the feeling of diffusion that these do have. And when seeing the upper treble, you see this peak. I do not hear the peak on the upper treble, and that's, of course, the measurements after AK are not considerable, correct? But if they are ever so slightly present there, those peaks, I do not detect them, and the upper treble is what I will call a touch muted. I wish there would have been more air, and I'm sure that with more air you could have had a bit more precision in the imaging, and that's why I think that the sound lends itself to sounding a bit more diffuse and more distant. But I think it's again a lot of fun, a hell lot of fun. These are like going on a Luna Park and getting on the most trippiest fucking thing on there and just enjoying yourself without giving a shit of all the risks you're incurring. You're going on the most dangerous ride, but you're enjoying every second of it, because it's fun. It's a hell of fun. You don't care about the what could happen. You don't care about. These are guilty pleasure, what I will call them. That Luna Park thing, stupid analogy that I did, yeah, these do sound a bit like that, if does make any sense. They do have it does have its problems, it does have its dangers, but when you go up there, when you actually go on that ride, you don't think about it. You just enjoy the music, and I think these are an excellent earphone for that. And the last words are, of course, for imaging. I've already talked about the imaging. Now, soundstage doesn't have too much depth, but does have a good amount of height and width, like openness. Despite not having the brilliance there after 10K, it does sound rather spacious. More spacious than the Starfields for sure, much more spacious than the Edemotics, and of course these do not, I think, compete with those, but we're not talking about that now. We're talking about like what you get for this price, and comparing these with one of the bundle earbuds that come with your phone, these have much more clarity. They have much bigger soundstage. I'm comparing them to like the AKG buds and the Samsung Galaxy buds. They have more soundstage. They have more width. They have more prominent, more fun. Not necessarily as tight bass, but it's more fun. They are much more expressive in terms of the mid-range. They are much more detailed. I do not think that these are detail monsters. They're not made for that, and that's why I skipped the detail portion, but that's not what these are for. If you want detail, I think you should invest a bit more, and I wouldn't suggest the SSR because those are like all upper mid-range and literally no bass. They're anemic as fuck. Sorry if that offends some of you, but that's my opinion. I do not think they have the bass to sustain a lot of the music that I listen to, and I listen to a wide variety of genres. If you want more detail, you should maybe go check out the Tinti 3, and if you want to spend a bit less, the KZ-ZS10 Pro is a good upgrade from these. But buy them, enjoy them. They don't cost much. They are great for what they do. The level of timbre and realism is not amazing, but the fun factor really does round the sound signature of these very well, very well, and I really do enjoy listening to these, even when I'm coming from those $100 IM, $60 IM. I do like them a lot. They are the most fun set aside from the Bonus IE Pro, and they are a hella wonky fucking pleasure. I do not think they're fatiguing, despite the peaks, and even those that are treble sensitive, not with all songs but with most songs, you're not gonna have any problem with these. I talk too much, sorry, it's like a 32-minute long video. I'm going to stop it right there, and yeah, enjoy. I hope you liked it. That's all for today. Thank you very much, and see you in the next one. Bye guys.